Hello and welcome to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Pool's first ever Facebook Live event. I am Inspector Adrian Thompson. I work within the Pool Neighbourhood Police team, and this evening you'll hear from some of my colleagues and the members of the council about some of the issues that matter to you based on the questions that you sent into us from the advert we sent out last week. Please bear with us, the technology is new. We're not used to being online as NPTs. We like to work face-to-face with our communities. But this allows us to be COVID secure, and in this day and age, that's very important. So all of us are in different buildings, and we're all talking to you independently and tuned in as and when a question arises for us. The benefits of this are being trialled, and if it works, it could be rolled out wider to some of our neighbourhood engagements, which would be a real benefit to us and allow us to engage with you more often. Even though this is COVID secure, please be aware this is not purely about COVID and COVID issues. This is your forum. This is your chance to speak to your neighbourhood inspectors and the neighbourhood teams and raise matters that are really affecting you and your communities. It's about the things that you think maybe aren't important, but really they are, and we need to know what they are. So please take your time, watch the viewing. Hope you have some interesting questions. And if you have any questions you want to ask, please put them into the box below the message and we'll get them up onto the screen where we can. I can't guarantee to answer every single question this evening. Those that we don't get a chance to answer this evening, we will take away and respond to you directly with a response relevant to your question. And some questions may be repeated. So people will ask the same question over and over. So again, if you don't get to your personal question, hopefully we'll cover it for you in some of the content. Joining me this evening are Inspector Danny Hamlin for Bournemouth North, which is the area of Bournemouth above the A338. Inspector Darren Harris, who covers Bournemouth South, which is pretty much Bournemouth Town Centre, West Hill and Westbourne. Inspector Helen Deakin for Bournemouth East and Christchurch areas, including all the way out to the border with Hampshire. We also have Superintendent Heather Dixey, who is our COVID lead for Dorset Police, and Councillor Drew Miller come from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council to give us the council's point of view on some of the questions that you raise. Hope you find something of interest to you during the evening, and we are here to take questions from you as you go through, so please add your questions into the comments box below, and the team behind the scenes will get them through to us and we'll make sure that they're asked for you. Shortly I will introduce everyone to you. Everyone will get 5 minutes just to tell you about themselves and about their area of work, and then we'll go on to the questions. Again, please bear with us. If I pixelate, I do apologise. It's my connection, it's not actually me. Our first presenter, Superintendent Heather Dixey, with an update for you.
Hi, good evening everybody, and thanks for joining us here tonight. As I say, obviously this is predominantly for you to put questions towards your neighbourhood inspectors to find out what's going on within your local area and any concerns you have. However, obviously I'm here as well to assist in my role. I am what we call the Silver Commander for Dorset Police. So I have a responsibility to ensure that everybody understands the legislation within Dorset Police, and also then how we enforce that and how we work with the communities to engage with you, to let you explain to you exactly what the legislation means and enforce that, unfortunately, in the rare cases that we have to do so. So any questions that you have tonight around the legislation, questions around what you can and can't do, I'll try my very best to answer as much as we possibly can for you. So please fire away any questions that you want in the bottom, and I'll help you as much as I can. But that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hand over to Councillor Drew Miller for an update from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council.
Yeah, hello, and firstly, thank you very much for the invite to join you today. It's a really good initiative, and really pleased to be here. So public health is under the remit of the local authority. So I'll just pause briefly to go through some of the numbers effectively and say where we are in relation to the COVID situation. So our numbers as of last night was 621 out of 100,000 was the rate we had, which is really, really high. The good news is that topped out at about 800, so it's starting to come down, but it's coming down quite slowly. And to put that into some context, so we're at 621. The average rate in England is 382. So effectively, we're now an outlier. We spent most of the first wave being really low in terms of our instances, but we're now actually, worrying nationally. So our messaging has become, more serious. It's very much, act like you've got this, stay at home, please. And the main reason for that is the fact that we've got our hospitals are really, really full at the moment. So, we've got over 500, around about 550 people across Dorset in hospital beds with COVID. And in the first wave, that number didn't get anywhere near 200. So we're our system is, much more stressed than it has been before. I'll wrap up so we can get on to some of the questions. Just in terms of what the council's responsible for, enforcement wise, we've got a mix of environmental health officers and COVID marshals. From a community perspective, we're responsible for delivering the Together We Can initiative, which is provide 2,000 volunteers have been amazing coming forward to provide support to people who need it. We can put that number up for anybody who's interested. And from an economic point, we've had to stand up a lot of the government support schemes. Incidentally, we got £90 million out, to businesses on Friday alone. So a really evolving landscape and quite a broad piece of work for us. Very happy to answer any questions this evening. So please let them come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder to everyone, please pop your questions into the comments box. If you want anything asked on screen, we will endeavour to get them up and read out for you. We do have some that came in before we went live, which we'll start with, and then if you have something you want to ask, please pop it in there and we'll make sure that it's asked for you. We'll move on to each of the police sections now to give an update on their section, who they are, introduce themselves to you, and what's happening in their area. So if we start with myself, I cover the area of Poole, all the way up to Upton and up as far as the river running between us and Wimborne. The area itself is, as you probably well know, a great mix of seafronts, the lively town centre, the port area, some very old and established communities, and some lovely parts of the world and very expensive parts of the world. In terms of how we perform and what my team look at and what they focus on, we have had our neighbourhood surveys out for the last few months. The last one started last October and ran until recently, and the updates that came from you and people like you in our community is that the things that matter to you most are ASB, burglary and county lines or drug dealing, depending on what the answer you ticked in that box. And those are the areas that my team will focus on. So we take those three core priorities as part of our neighbourhood team, and then each section is challenged then to do something which feeds into that process and complements that priority for you within the community. So within each of our communities, Camperdeath, Oakdale, Hamworthy, they've all got their own little priorities that they focus on that will feed in and help reduce that issue across the whole of the area. For example, in ASB, we have the bus station. Historically, the bus station has been an area where we have seen some issues in Poole. We now have a large multi-agency panel meeting set up around the bus station where we work with the local authority. We work with social care, education, healthcare, the local businesses, and the bid to try and improve the area for everyone and reduce the ASB in there. And we have had some success with that. There is still some work to do. We are still working as a group to try and improve the area. And it's been a year now since that's been running, and we are due for our assessment and our review. And hopefully we can then see where the next steps we have to take to further improve that area for everyone. Conversely, we have much smaller ASB issues, such as bike riding down the chines. These are small areas where people go, they'll dig up the ground to make some ramps, which damages the grass and gets to the tree roots, starts damaging the tree roots. Doesn't have a massive effect on the wider community, but does affect the people living around that area with regards to the noise and the damage. So we have to focus on a much smaller, tighter problem. It's not just about tackling the bike riders, it's looking at how we can give them something to do and take them away from that area, but also make the area nicer for other people. So again, we're working in partnership with the communities team and the parks team to look after and protect those areas. So what we cover and what we do is very broad. Drugs and county lines is a national issue, and we work very closely with lots of national teams. We work very closely with our own teams within Dorset who are specialists in this area, and with the local authority again to look at closure orders and orders to try and prevent people being in the area, but in particular around the safeguarding of young people. Young people get dragged into that type of life, they get moved around the country. You've seen the adverts on telly, there are videos available to watch that you can see and see what county lines is about. And it's really important to me and my team that those young people are protected and safeguarded, and that's a lot of close work with the council and social care. And burglary, although COVID has allowed us a reduction in burglary because more people are home now during these times, we have still seen an issue around garage breaks and breaks to garages for bicycles and things like that. So it affects people, it affects communities, it feels very personal. So for us, it's a matter that we have to address and we have to deal with. And those are our priorities and how we're going to deal with them. I'll pass you on now to Inspector Danny Tamblin for an issue on Bournemouth North.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for hosting us. As my colleague said, then my name is Danny Tamblin. I'm the inspector for North Bournemouth MPT, which is a new posting for me. I started it at the beginning of December, which I'm very excited about. So we cover the area from Bearwood, Northbourne, Kinston, Muscliffe, Talbot Woods, so down through to Talbot Woods, Winton, Charminster, so the whole northern area of Bournemouth. In a similar vein to what was already mentioned, our survey suggests that the biggest concern to residents in North Bournemouth is antisocial behaviour and drug dealing and associated criminality. Those will form the main priorities for what we're going to deal with and what we're going to focus our efforts on over the next 100 days. Different things matter to different people throughout the community, so we do our best to try and meet everyone's demands, but that is where our main focus will be. Antisocial behaviour is very broad, and it affects lots of different people in lots of different ways. It can be in some of our more open spaces, but also have effects in our town centres as well. So it affects people's livelihoods and it affects people's day-to-day quality of life. Now, North Bournemouth is a very safe place to live and work, and it's my responsibility and my privilege to be able to assist in maintaining it that way and also improving the quality of life for people there, which we're doing in collaboration with some of our fantastic partners we have. Whilst we are going to focus on antisocial behaviour through our efforts and drug dealing and associated criminality, I'm aware that there are a number of other concerns in our area, burglary being one and vehicle crime being another. Now, dwelling burglary is actually down about 11% on previous year. Other burglaries down over 45%, and vehicle crime is down almost 16%. However, we can all work together to improve that. So one of the early messages I want to put across to the residents of North Bournemouth is to consider why burglaries are down. I think part of that is because of COVID. We've reduced opportunity. People are home more. But please, as and when lockdown starts to be released, let's do our part to reduce opportunities there by making sure that we are following good, safe advice to make good use of security devices on our doors, lock our houses up, don't leave valuable items on display. And the same thing goes for vehicles. Secure your vehicles, don't leave keys, wallets, iPhone chargers, laptops on display. Let's make it as difficult as we possibly can for those coming into our communities and committing crime. I'm looking forward to fielding your questions and seeing what I can do to further improve your life in North Bournemouth. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you, Danny. Move on now to Inspector Helen Deacon for Bournemouth East and Christchurch.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. As we said, this is our first Facebook Live event. So my name is Helen Deacon. I am the inspector covering Bournemouth East and Christchurch. Bournemouth East formerly is Boscombe. So that includes the areas of Southbourne, Folkestone, Littledown, Eastcliff and Springbourne. And then Christchurch, you've got the town centre, obviously, Somerford, Puel, Highcliffe. It also includes all the way across the Bournemouth International Airport and the rural area of Burton. So as you can appreciate, the area is very varied and very vast, so that is not an exhaustive list. Clearly there is the areas, there are border lines between our neighbourhood areas, and we also border with Hampshire as well. So what I would do is encourage you to have a look at our Dorset Police website. It's really easy to find. You just type in Dorset Police, and across the top there's a neighbourhood policing tab, and if you were to have a look on there, find where you live on the map, click on the link, and you'll be able to see basically what neighbourhood covers your particular area. And that's quite an informative website, in as much as it'll be able to show you who the team is that covers your respective area, so you can see the PCs and PCSOs who are looking after you. It also has the neighbourhood survey that we've already touched on by the other inspectors, And that's really important. If nothing else after this live event, if you can log on to the website and complete the neighbour survey, that's the opportunity for you as a community to tell us what matters to you and what you say are the priorities. And then we can obviously read in respect of those results and make sure we listen to those and put them in our plans moving forward. So again, as I say, it's a really good opportunity to have a little read of that website in terms of what the neighbourhood policing are doing, and it also tells you in quite a bit of detail around our priorities. So in terms of Bournemouth, East and Christchurch, there is a reoccurring theme. We've done the neighbourhood survey previously, and it's something we do ongoing. And we too have identified the priorities for our area are antisocial behaviour, drugs and county lines, and burglaries. So that's, again, it was taken into account the previous neighbourhood survey. So it's really just to explain to you the sort of things that we do for antisocial behaviour and for all the three areas tackling our priorities. The whole point of neighbourhood policing is to take what we call a problem-solving approach. So what I would say, it's really important to be informative and to always report any incidents that are ongoing within the community. So because it's the information that you provide to us that will inform us in terms of where we need to focus and target our resources. So we also work with, not just on our own, but we also work with our partner agencies as well, especially the council who have their own antisocial behaviour lead and department. And there's various other departments we work with as well, such as housing, licensing, etc. So we work together with them to ensure that we have an enhanced service for you, and that we're really sort of creative and have a joined up approach in trying to tackle those problems for you. So that in short summarises a little bit about Bournemouth and Christchurch, and I look forward to taking questions from you later on.
Thank you, Helen. Finally, we move to Inspector Darren Harris for Bournemouth South.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very first Facebook Live session for BCP. So, as Adrian just said, I'm Darren Harris, the Inspector for what we call Bournemouth South. That, in essence, is Bournemouth Town Centre, from the beach up through the gardens, through West Hill and into Westbourne. And the town centre is a very busy, vibrant community with lots of different sectors to that community. We, my team of Sergeant PCs and PCSOs, have been listening to the concerns of each of those communities over the past few months or so. And in conjunction with the local neighbourhood surveys that have been completed recently, through yourselves, we've identified three main priorities for our team to work on over the next coming 100 days. There's two main themes for those, really. That's ASB and vehicle crime. The ASB has been broken down into two sort of distinct sections, really. We've got what we call youth-related antisocial behaviour, which primarily sort of takes place, unfortunately, in the town centre around the gardens. And the second one is drug-related antisocial behaviour, primarily from adults, taking place around the West Hill area. So both of those have been identified as our top two priorities, and with our partners in the council, social care, housing, and St Mungo to look after the homeless, we are working on trying to resolve both those problems in a partnership approach. That has great success working on the partnership approach, because not only does it allow us to take enforcement action against individuals, but the partnership also allows us to give support and guidance to those that need it, rather than taking them through the criminal justice system. So it's a two-pronged approach, really, through diversion and enforcement. The third area we're concentrating on at the moment is vehicle crime, and that's primarily in the Westbourne area. Now, whilst that has been decreasing of late, it's still been identified as a priority and a concern by members of the local community. So we've got a plan in place to work towards that. What I would ask, similar to what my colleague Danny Tamblin was saying, is that please take as much crime prevention measures as you can yourself, because lots of that type of crime is very opportunistic, where people see items left on display in cars, such as purses, wallets, bags, even things like cable chargers for mobile phones. They are a magnet to those that want to commit crime. So if you can, please remove those from site, and that does help and has a part to play in trying to reduce that particular problem. I would encourage, as Helen was saying, for you to contact us either through the websites or through our social media, or by speaking to my colleagues and out and about, because it's important I get feedback from the community as to how we're doing, what's working well, what we could do better, and more importantly, what it is that's affecting you that we can work on. And by working in that partnership and working together, hopefully my aim is to make Bournemouth Town Centre a better place to live, work and come and visit. So very much looking forward to working with you in the community. And please submit any questions you've got for Bournemouth Town Centre, and I'll be happy to answer those for you this evening. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Hope those introductions were of interest to you and gave you an insight into some of the work going on in amongst each section and by the council, and what we're all doing to work together to try and tackle some of the issues. There are plenty of comments and questions coming in. Thank you very much. Keep them coming in. The more the better. I'm sure my colleagues will not like me for saying it, but we do enjoy being challenged. So please, if you've got a question to ask, please ask it. It's better asked than not asked. At least we can answer it for you and try and get some support to you if you need it. I'll start with some of the questions submitted prior to today's event. I've got a list here to my left. I'll go through it. And the first question on there is for Inspector Danny Tamblin. It's a question around new police officers and says, when and where will the extra police officers be deployed?
So as you're aware, there is a national uplift for around 20,000 police officers. That is coming to Dorset. It will have a huge effect on Dorset, a really positive one. And that is not just officers that we're replacing those who are retiring. That is a genuine increase in the numbers that are available to us. We are looking at an increase across MPT in all our areas of 70 to 80 officers over the next couple of years. I'm really pleased to see that we are welcoming 2 new PCSOs to the North Bournemouth area around the end of March. And after that, we should be seeing an increase in police officers across MPT around April and October this year. In terms of where they'll be deployed, I'll be quite broad and say, well, they'll be best served to serve the community. Now, I appreciate that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out there, but what I won't do is make a decision that isn't based on all the best available evidence, and that includes public opinion responses to surveys, where I think that you will get the best response, the best value, and they make the biggest impact on those priorities of being highly visible in the community to reassure people, but also to tackle antisocial behaviour, drug dealing and associated criminality. So they are coming and they'll be well placed.
Thank you. Next question on there is one for me. It's around Ashley Road, and it says Ashley Road is getting worse during the day with lots of people who clearly have alcohol and drug addictions gathering in large groups outside Co-op, St John's Church, and obviously KFC and the benches, which can be very intimidating. Ashley Road itself is a hotspot area for Poole Police, and by that I mean it's one of the areas that we focus a lot of our resources into. It's a very busy shopping area. It's a thoroughfare right through Poole from Bournemouth. It's got communities either side, which are long established, close communities, and lots of people living there. So it is a very busy area. There are lots of houses around there for people who need support, and lots of those people live there, and we have to look after their welfare as well. It's quite pleasing to say that the council and local businesses and the PCC have put together packages to allow us to introduce what are called CSAS officers. CSAS stands for Community Safety Accreditation Scheme. These are officers employed by the council, deployed by the police with some powers to deal with antisocial behaviour and some of the social issues that go on in our communities. And we now have dedicated CSAS officers on Ashley Road looking to tackle some of those issues. My team also are up there. There are a dedicated PC and a dedicated PCSO to the Ashley Road and Newtown areas. Their details are on the website. If you want to get hold of them, please send them any questions or any concerns that you have. They will be visible in the area, tackling those issues that you raise, and some of the concerns that happen just away from Ashley Road. Just off Ashley Road, we've got Alexandra Park, which has some issues, and down into Branksome Rec, which also has some issues with ASB. So the whole area is getting a real focus for some of these new officers and these new deployments. We are also working with the council on their review of the public space protection orders. These are orders that come in to allow the council to put into place restrictions or some conditions on the area to try and improve the area for other people, such as no open cans of alcohol and things like that. They're up for their review. We're working with the council to review those to make sure that they are fit for purpose and that they do the job that they're intended to do, and that we can work with the council to enforce them and improve the area. So we are aware of the issues up there. We are trying to tackle the issues up there, but please, I could urge anyone that lives in the area or suffers anything up in the area, please let us know about it. The more we know, the more we can do and the more impact we can have for you. The next question is for Councillor Mellor. It's a question that says, hand car washes and balloting open under lockdown. If closed, why have some remained open?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Adrian. So just to be clear, hand car washes should be closed. The only car washes that are allowed open are the automated car washes. So if you are seeing any hand car washes that are open, please report it to us. We'd like to know. We'd send our environmental health officers, and or our COVID marshals out to have a look at them. But clearly they should be closed, and we'd like to know about any that are open. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question on my list is for Inspector Helen Deacon. It says, please, can you control the Neighbourhood Community Centre area in the evening? Youngsters meeting in the cars, running riot in the children's play park, with smashed bottles everywhere, KFC, McDonald's rubbish, cans, bottles, booze, etc.
Okay, thank you for that question. Obviously, I've had a little bit of luxury in being able to do some research in relation to that particular area. And this goes back to my point of saying how important it is to make us aware of anything going on. So this is the first time it's come to our attention through the Facebook Live event. Having done some research from a policing perspective, we haven't had any ongoing reports of any antisocial behaviour in that specific area for quite a number of months. So there's certainly no recent reports, which goes back to why I'm saying it's so important just to keep us informed and let us know. So you have brought it to our attention now, and clearly there is an issue there, and it's something we will review and monitor going forward. And just to reassure you again around the antisocial behaviour is one of our priorities within Christchurch and Boscombe. And as I think I mentioned before around the community approach, the partnership approach that we can take, particularly our antisocial behaviour department within the council, they also have enforcement opportunities. So Adie's touched on something like the public safety protection orders. They've got some really good tools, if you like. They've got a good toolkit that they can use alongside us to tackle antisocial behaviour. So as I say, we do know now that it's an issue, and it will be monitored and reviewed going forward. And just to reassure you that ASB is one of our priorities. And it may be that Mr. Mellor at some point can touch on the issue regarding parks and play parks. I think he had something he can say in relation to that at some point during this live event.
Thank you, Helen. That brings us very nicely onto the parks and play parks issue. That was another pool question, which I'll start off and I'll hand over to Councillor Miller for the second part. It raises concerns around the Upper Parkstone area, in particular the Appleby Road Play Park. Weekend ASB, broken glass, bolts taken off children's play equipment, and benches being burnt, and what's being done to stop it. The park itself sits nestled sort of below Ashley Road, just before Rossmore Road, in that little section of community. It's surrounded by houses, and it's quite an important local resource for families in or around the area. Like Helen says, in terms of looking purely at this, the data for it, I don't get a lot of reports about issues in the park itself. The surrounding area, I do. They are areas that we target, so the team are targeting the roads surrounding the park, and will have been through the park, but not focusing on a specific issue in there. So, Tina, for your question, thank you for raising it. It's something that I will get the team to focus on specifically around patrols into that area, and linking up with the CSAS staff and the council as well to drop down off Ashley Road and go and do some patrols there to try and help out and reduce the impact in there. With regards to the issues in the parks, if I hand over to Councillor Miller, he can pick up some of the issues from the council's point of view.
Yeah, thank you very much, AD. So, effectively, worth mentioning, parks are open. Play parks are open in these COVID restrictions for children having their daily exercise. So, for them to be open, we're having to take much more stringent cleaning protocols effectively with them. So, we should have teams, there regularly, and I hope we can rectify some of those problems as well. Just in terms of the point around the CSAS officers, we're committing to actually bring forward in our next budget round a further 6 officers across BCP, which is quite a material investment. So we appreciate that this type of antisocial behaviour is something that's really fundamental, and it's a priority of ours to work with our policing colleagues and through the powers that our CSAS officers have to try and do more of this. So thank you very much for reporting it. Please report it, and we're sorted.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's very important to report issues to us or to the council, so these actions can be looked at and picked up on. If it's affecting you, it's affecting other people. So please make everyone aware of what's going on. Our next pre-question, as it were, is about barrel bikes. It's for Inspector Danny Tamblin, and says, can I ask, are you planning to enforce the law regarding e-scooters? As it stands, unless they're part of a trial scheme, they are not permitted to be used in public and are becoming a menace in Bournemouth. Bring this to Inspector Danny Tamblin first, and then maybe on to Drew for a look at the barrel bike scheme at the council.
Yep, thanks for that question. Simple answer is yes, we are. So just to clarify the issue there, that e-scooters are a motor vehicle under the Road Traffic Act, which means that any offences that can apply to a motor vehicle can potentially apply to an e-scooter. So things like dangerous or inconsiderate driving, careless driving, drink or drug driving can apply to e-scooters. They are what's considered a private light electrical vehicle, which means that they're not subject to tax and registration processes, which means you cannot legally use them on the road. And if you do, you are committing a criminal offence. So there is an exemption to this, which was brought in mid last year, which relates to if they're hired from an approved rental company that is sanctioned by the Department of Transport. So that is where the barrel bikes hire scheme comes in, and why they are different from publicly owned e-scooters. We appreciate that not everyone's aware of that. There's been some confusion amongst people purchasing them about where they can and can't use them. The simple fact is, folks, if you are riding an e-scooter on the road and it's not a hired one, it's just a personally bought one, you are committing an offence. If you ride it in a public place, that includes on pavements, that includes on the roads and through parks and such like. We are adopting a communicative approach based on those 4 E's we've talked about before. We've mentioned this during COVID. So we're going to engage, explain, encourage prior to any enforcement. So we will do our best to speak to people on e-scooters, but ultimately there will be enforcement if people continue to use them. Thank you.
Is Councillor Mellors an update from you on the barrel bike scheme or the scooter scheme?
I'll just come in briefly, Eddie. So effectively, as of Monday, there's been launched a trial scheme of e-scooters in BCP. So our bike operator, Barrel Bikes, now have a small supply of e-scooters, which we're conducting a trial on. There's a trial in various parts of the country, so we're going to, very interested to look and see, the results of that. I think really interesting to note, it's a bit more regulated, as you've quite rightly said, than the bike piece, where somebody has to have a driving license to be able to, unlock one of these e-scooters. So there is a trial. We're really committed to trying to ease congestion when we come out of the COVID situation. This might be an answer to it. It's got to work in conjunction with other road users and pedestrians, etc. So interested to see the trial. It started on Monday, and we'll look at the results. But thank you.
No, thank you. Our final question submitted prior to the event is also for Councillor Mellor, and it says, lastly, ironically, working with BCP, is there anything you can do about the dangerous parking at Horseshoe Common, Boscombe between Iceland and McDonald's, Westbourne at Schaefer, and the Triangle area?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important problem, this, effectively, and it really was exacerbated last summer when we had an awful lot of visitors. So enforcement is something we're making more of a commitment to. We are enforcing now, effectively. So if your cars are parked illegally, we will be looking to enforce. One of the important things that we were able to do last summer. Previously, we didn't have powers to tow away vehicles. We do now, effectively, and we did that successfully in the summer. We find that's a much bigger deterrent than a fine often. So, if this problem persists and we see, cars dangerously parked, we will enforce on them and tow them away. So we're looking to be much more proactive this summer than potentially we were last summer. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Sorry for that. I had a slight issue with my mute button. It wouldn't go off. That's the last of our event questions. Thank you for those of you who've submitted questions during the event. Some of them will come up now on screen, and I'll direct them to the people that can possibly answer them the best for you. If you do have a question, please remember to write it into us. If it's not asked, we can't answer it for you or try and sort the problem out for you. So please let us know your issues, and we will get back to you with an answer if we can't answer it for you this evening. I think the first question up will be for what are you doing to address the problem of bike theft at Castlepoint? So that's a Bournemouth North question. So that would be for Inspector Danny Tamblin.
So thank you for the question. So Castlepoint is an area that we work very closely with. They have a well-established security team there, and it's an area that we're proud to say that during the Christmas period was renowned in the area as being a safe place to visit and to shop at prior to the lockdown. It is one of the areas that features highly on our priorities for antisocial behaviour and related criminality. So specifically, my answer to you is there will be high visibility patrols there. As with all high visibility patrols, quite often people don't see them unless they're at the right place at the right time. But I can assure you that our officers are out there. We are looking towards this, and we will be working with Castlepoint and the team there to see if we can identify areas that are specifically at risk from bikes being stolen, and then doing what we can to mitigate that risk. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Danny. The next question we have hopefully will be on screen shortly for you. Is a question in relation to car crime. From Neil, what do you do for car break-in and theft, not vehicle theft? Sorry, what do you do for a car break-in and theft, not vehicle theft? There's a generic question about that. So, Inspector Darren Harris, can you answer that one?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. As that's one of the priorities for my section at the moment around car break-ins and theft from them. What we do, we identify the areas where they're taking place the most frequent, and they're subject to high visibility patrol, so to deter and detect any offences. We also do some work behind the scenes to identify those that may be responsible so they can be targeted. But the team that own that particular problem at the moment, they've done an awful lot of work around crime prevention up in the areas concerned. So there's been lots of leaflet drops. They've also put up posters around the affected areas to identify it as a problem so that people take the crime prevention advice that I mentioned earlier. And it's about education, as I say, to hopefully people learn not to leave vehicles on, valuables on display in their vehicles to try and stop this type of opportunistic crime. But it is potentially around identifying, we think, who's that responsible, targeting those individuals, and then visible patrols in those areas where it takes place. There's also other options open to us which we utilise to help try and catch those that are responsible, and they all form part of our problem-solving plan to ensure that those resources are in the right places at the right time. So it's very much about trying to identify when the problems are happening, the times and dates the thefts take place, so that we can get the right people in the right places at the right time, A, to try and deter them in the first place, or secondly, to catch those that are committing those offences when they happen. So thank you for that question, Neil. I hope that answers that for you.
Thank you, Darren. Moving on to our third question. Please keep your questions coming in. They are important and we will answer them for you if we can. So from Andy Price, how has the current apocalypse affected your day-to-day operations, and how are you managing the drop in staffing numbers due to officers having to isolate, etc.? That's for Superintendent Heather Dixey as a COVID-related question.
Hi, yeah, thanks Andy for your question on that. I'm pleased to say we have had an impact, or I'm not pleased to say, we have had an impact from officers having become COVID positive, officers having to isolate as a result of that. And we have had particular areas across the force which has been affected by that. So one operational area, for example, is our force control room. where we had quite a number of staff there, but I'm pleased to say that we obviously still managed to maintain our service to the public, and it didn't have an impact on that ability of people to call in if they were required the police. The numbers obviously are within the Bournemouth and Christchurch pool area, because obviously that is the area we are seeing the most infections within Dorset, but it is not having an operational impact at the moment. So we are very, very COVID secure. We have put in an awful lot of measures internally. For example, we do not have teams that cross over with each other. They work within their particular team when they're on shift. They do not then cross over with other departments. So we keep our staff very much isolated from each other. And when officers go out in a vehicle, if you see two, for example, together in a vehicle, they stick in those twos so they don't then cross over within their own team as well. So because of these measures that we've put in place, with the PPE they have, with their face masks, with their gloves, aprons, and they also have now goggles for in particular incidents where we may have to enter a premise or a location where we know somebody may be COVID positive, then they have this additional enhanced PPE to wear as well. Because of all these measures that we've put in place, we have managed to maintain lower levels of sickness and isolation as a result of that. So I'm pleased to say it hasn't impacted on our ability to deliver policing to the communities of Dorset at this time. But hopefully that answers your question. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive answer. Hopefully, Andy, that did answer the question for you. Our next question, question number 4, I think is also a COVID question from Ree Nunez. I hope I pronounced that right for you, Ree. Hi all. During the current lockdown, how do you have to deal with illegal parties or similar?
Thank you, Rui. Yes, sadly, yes, we have. Since this lockdown began on this particular current one, which on the 4th of January, we have issued in the region of around 100 fixed penalty notices already during that time. Some of them are, in the main, the highest, obviously, the ones that we issue are for people then not, who are out in the public and have no reason to be there. So it's not necessary for them to be outside their home address and they have no exemption to be so. But then the second highest is for gatherings inside home addresses, where at the moment, obviously, you cannot have anyone else inside your home unless it's part of a support bubble or a childcare support as well. So where those instances are happening, yes, we have issued fines in those particular cases. And even this weekend just gone, we issued 19 fixed penalties to a party of students in the Bournemouth area, which again, is awful behaviour. They need to understand that this is affecting and impacting on the infection rates around us. As Councillor Miller also highlighted, we have a very high rate in this area and it's staying high and it's not coming down quick enough. So we all owe each other to protect one another and follow the law and the guidance as much as we can. So we will continue to enforce where we have particular events like that, where people are blatantly breaching the law. Parties in particular are high transmission areas, so we will take very strong action where we find those. And let's remember, the government have just brought in the additional £800 fine now. So previously it was a £10,000, well, we still have a £10,000 fine for people gathering illegally with 30 or over. Now, if you are around 15 people, you can get an £800 fine now, and then anything under 15 people, you will have a £200 fine. But remember, each time you commit that offence, it doubles, and it goes up 200 to 400 to 600. So it becomes very, very expensive, and it's absolutely not worth it. Please, I ask the wider community not to undertake those types of events. But I will say as well that on the whole, vast majority of the public are brilliant. They are absolutely sticking to these rules. They are being very sensible within their approach. They are protecting one another, and it's a really, really small minority. But where there is that small minority, we will continue to fine. So I hope that answers your question, but thank you.
Thank you very much. I completely agree. Most of our communities have been very, very good through this whole time and working very closely with us. And so thank you to everyone that has done that. Moving on to our fifth question, should be on screen shortly, hopefully, from Carol. Southbourne has a high amount of car breaks. any feedback on this, please, as well as the drug deal selling in Folkestone? Helen, question for you, I think.
Okay, thank you for your question. So in relation to the car brakes, you've heard from my colleagues in respect of the approaches we can take in relation to that. Again, I'm not aware that that is a significant problem, but be reassured that I will go away from here and do some research to understand where the problem is, how big the problem is, and similar to what my colleague Darren has said, it's all about understanding the problem, potentially looking at developing the intelligence and information around potential suspects, and then we'll be looking to carry out some crime prevention advice in relation to that. And it's just reiterating again that, you know, to leave your car secure, do not leave any valuables on show. Try and park your car, for example, under the lamppost if they're on the street. So it's all the things that have been said already, and as I say, I will review that to see what that problem looks like, and we can take our problem solving approach to that to try and reassure you that we'll do everything we can. In relation to the drugs aspect, I think I mentioned earlier that we've got 3 main priorities for Boscombe and Christchurch collectively, and one of those is drug dealing and the county lines. So that's sort of the overarching priority for the area, but then we have specific ward areas where we look at and tackle and target any drugs issues within the specific ward areas. And again, we obviously rely on that increased reporting from the communities to drug-related problem in Southbourne that I'm aware of. But certainly we've got a lot of tools, as I've mentioned before, in the ways in which we can approach and tackle that. So again, I will look into what that problem looks like in terms of the drugs, and I'll be looking to carry out some intelligence work around that, as well as with both the drugs and the vehicle crime, looking at carrying out some high visibility patrols in those areas to act as a deterrent, and to obviously try and get out some crime prevention advice, and just still encourage and continue to encourage you guys to tell us all these things, because that's what we need to know. So I appreciate I wasn't specific in answering your question, but I'd like to reassure you that I will go in and have a look at that in more detail as a problem for our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Our 6th question, hopefully is on screen shortly. It's a long one. So from Kelly, there's still a lot of ASB in the southeast corner of Merrick Park, resulting in dumping of drug paraphernalia, condoms, used wipes, etc., which is obviously particularly worrying during the pandemic. Some of the wooded areas have been cut back recently, but what else are you doing to discourage this behaviour? Is it possible to have some police presence in there? Danny, that's a Bournemouth North question, so one for you.
The short answer for you, Kelly, is yes, absolutely. There is a possibility of some police presence there. I can't guarantee exactly when there'll be, what times and such like, and there certainly won't be a permanent presence there, but absolutely yes. That Merrick Park is an area we're well aware of. We are aware of the antisocial behaviour, as you mentioned in your question. There's some fantastic work that our partners in the council have done by cutting back some of the bushes there to reduce the anonymity of the people engaged in that antisocial behaviour. And we will play our part in relation to high visibility policing. So we are aware of it. All I would ask is that you or anyone else who's experiencing that in that area, if they do call us, appreciate when it's not an emergency, but the better picture we can build up of exactly when it is occurring or most likely occurring, we can deploy our resources in the most effective manner. And as my colleague used that phrase earlier, to get the right people in the right place at the right time, so that we can direct our high visibility patrols with a great evidence base for you to say, hey, look, it's happening around about these times. We will do everything we can to make sure that we have a presence there whenever possible, in amongst other demands. So just to reiterate, the answer is very much yes. We'll have some people there, and I hope you'll notice their presence.
Thank you, Danny. We've got time for a few more questions. If you do want to get one in, please keep them coming into the box, and we'll see what we can do. So from Richard, is there anything the police can do to solve the level of graffiti around Poole? There are several examples of it, using the same tag all over the town. The same person has sprayed on gantries and flyovers as far as Eastleigh. In short, Richard, yes, like my colleagues just said, that there is some stuff that we can do around that, and graffiti is one of those issues which just affects the ASB in an area. It goes back to long-term sort of theories around broken windows and things like that. If you let an area look graffitied and broken, then the ASB tends to go up with it. So that kind of environmental change and environmental work we do focus on quite seriously. We are aware of some graffiti issues when they get reported into us. We have a little space of graffiti around Broadstone and various things, and we do try and work with schools on these issues. In particular, we have a Safer Schools team whose job it is to go into schools and engage with people, and generally we find that a lot of the graffiti is by young people, hence I bring up the issue around schools. So if we can find shots on books and things going on, we can work out who's doing the graffiti, then we'll obviously speak to them, deal with them for any offences they've committed, but also offer them some sort of help and guidance as well. It is important to know where these things are happening. Sometimes differentiating between old graffiti and new graffiti can be quite hard. And there is some very good areas of all. There's the graffiti area underneath the bridge where people can go and they're left to do stuff in there. Some of that artwork that's in there is quite amazing, and that's an area where they can do it. But on people's property around the town, absolutely, we don't want it. And yes, we will try and tackle it where we can. So please let us know where you see it. Please send some photographs if you see it. My team will happily pick that up and we'll take that one moving forwards. Thank you. The next question, question number 8, from Chris. If you have a problem neighbour for music and non-criminal behaviour, who should you contact to deal with it? Problem music, if it's getting loud, would be the environmental health team who work from the council. The environmental health officers deal with noise and noise nuisance. They are on a call-out rota and do work, if not 24/7, certainly long periods of the day, and can come out and monitor any noise ongoing. And then they work closely with us to try and enforce any action against householders to reduce the noise directly. Longer term issues, so if it's a persistent problem that's always happening to you, it's becoming antisocial, that falls into the realms of sort of antisocial behaviour, then the neighbourhood teams will work with the environmental health officers to tackle the issue. And we can then look at things such as noise abatement notices. We can look at community protection notices. All these little pieces of legislation within the Antisocial Behaviour Act allow us to impact someone's behaviour and reduce the impact on their neighbours and other people in the streets by a stepped approach to managing their behaviour. Sometimes, generally they don't know it's causing a disturbance, so that initial call is enough to deal with it. Sometimes if it's persistent, then we have to look at stronger measures, and we will take that stepped approach up. So thank you for your question. Please, if it's affecting you, please let us know the address where it's happening. Drop a line to my team or whichever team that is, and we'll deal with that for you. Thank you. I think we have time for just a couple more this evening. Thank you for your patience with us and our technical problems if we've had any. Brian, Darren, what is the strategy for dealing with homeless and begging in Westbourne? Homeless sleep in the arcade and the former bingo hall, which also smells really bad. Are you helping them into shelters and discouraging begging outside Iceland and Tesco?
Thank you, Brian. It's a very good question, and it's one that's come up quite a lot in the past couple of weeks or so. So we are aware, I'm certainly aware of an increase in reports of begging and rough sleeping in the Westbourne area. So our work in partnership with St Mungo's, we do joint patrols with them, particularly early in the mornings, to speak to rough sleepers. St Mungo's then offer them support around what we can do to try and get them off the streets and into some accommodation. And that's had some really good success in Bournemouth town centre, and I anticipate that will continue into Westbourne. So we are aware of that. We are working on that with St Mungo's and our other partners, and I'm hoping you're going to see some improvements in that area in the very near future. We are aware of the begging also that's been taking place around Tesco's and other shops in the Westbourne area, but Tesco's I think is the main focus. I'm quite clear on that with my team, that begging around cash points in particular is something I really discourage. We look at, again, with St Mungo's and those that can assist to move those people on, educate them, and then look at if we need to be taking some form of enforcement action, either by ourselves or through the ASB team and the council, then that's considered as well, and it's done in a proportionate and appropriate way. So very much is what we do with COVID really at the moment. part of our approach is to sort of educate and explain the reasons first before we look at enforcement, see if we can change people's behaviour. But if it comes to it, then we talk to our partners in the council and see what was the most appropriate form of action we can take with the antisocial legislation that's available to us. So Westbourne is becoming known for that at the moment, but it is something that my local officers are working on, and you should see some presence around and dealing with that on a daily basis. So if it still becomes an issue, then please feed that back to me and I'll be happy to follow that up.
Lovely, thank you, Darren. I think there's one more question we have time for this evening. From Simon. Dorset Police have the use of a drone, but it's often stationed on the opposite side of the county to Christchurch. Will this asset be available to the east side of the county in the future? Danny, is that something you've got any experience with drones from your previous experience?
Nope. No. I can probably help there a little bit. So we do have a drone capacity. It is limited. It's based around use by our force support group, who are based at various locations around the county. It is a fantastic resource, but it's not something that is the answer to all our questions. It does certain things that a helicopter won't, and it won't do certain things that a helicopter will. So the simple answer is yes, it is a force-wide resource that will deploy as and when we can. But that's very much dependent on what the other demands are at the time and what the requirement is. So a good example is looking for high-risk missing persons. They have that capacity, and we'll make use of that where we're able to. So yes, it is available for use, but it's limited. It's pretty fair to say.
Lovely, thank you, Danny. Sorry for popping you on the spot there. That's the end of the questions that we have this evening. Just a few things just to wrap up and some closing bits. Any questions we've not answered, I do apologise. We can't get to everyone's questions this evening. I'm sure you understand that we are limited in time, but we will take them away, and over the next few days, either one of us or a member of our team will get back to you with an update to your questions. So thank you for sending it in, and apologies we haven't got to you yet. Please follow us over on our local Instagram and Twitter accounts, as well as Facebook, if you've got those platforms. There is some interesting information on there. We do post where we've been and updates on some of the activities we've been doing on the issues that affect you. So it's certainly worth looking. So if you don't see us in person, walking around the areas where we're patrolling, hopefully you'll see the updates that we have been there as a way of reassurance. You can find out more information on your local neighbourhood policing teams on the Dorset Police website. All the local teams are on there. Photos of all the local officers all linked to their areas, so you can see who you should have in your area and contact them directly if you want to. So from all, I hope my Fiona Bruce question time impersonation went fairly well, bringing everybody in. And until next time, when we can see you all again, thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your efforts at this time. We know it's difficult for everyone, but we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.